Whoa. The meaning of the pyramid. Those at the bottom serve the very foundation of the enterprise. Talking about the meaning of the pyramid and its symbolism. It is in effect a ruling hierarchy, each higher level embodying more knowledge and greater authority. Once again, those at the bottom serve the very foundation of the enterprise. We are all the people of the pyramid at this level. Those at the bottom serve the very foundation of the enterprise. They compose the worker class, the drones. While not entirely programmed with complex algorithms, the simple algorithms that run our everyday lives attest to the structure of our society. The people at the top run everything. They have all the money, prestige, and power. The vanity of their presence traces an outline of stereotypical fascism penetrating into the very core of the matrix. The might is the right to rule, the position of demigod. The global elite serve their hidden masters, the prison warders, the very constructs of the I itself. The reason the I sits above the pyramid in a non-connecting fashion is because it represents the hidden authority which stands above the people. The global elite are the visible authority, while the real prison warders are never seen on television or in public political rallies. They are rarely even talked about. To them, the people must never know who truly rules them. If they did, much chaos would ensue, and the goal is always to maintain order out of chaos, not vice versa. The Latin phrase surrounding the pyramid on the back of the $1 bill reads, "Annuit coeptis novus ordo cephalogram," or in other words, our enterprise is crowned with success, a new order of the ages. The title of this book I'm reading from is derived from that very phrase. There are 13 letters in the first title referencing the 13 bloodline families, or the Magi. This number appearing in other sectors as well, as can be seen in the 13 arrows and 13 leaves on the olive branch, clutched in the claws of the eagle. Originally, ancient cultures employed the use of the phoenix, which later adapted to the image of the eagle. The phoenix embodies rebirth and the secret of reincarnation kept by the Illuminati. There are also 13 stars in the star tetrahedron above the eagle's head, which represents a Merkaba vehicle, as well as 13 stripes in the American flag. Moving back to the pyramid, you can see that a star tetrahedron can also be traced with the lines connecting the O, the A, and the S in the phrasing as one triangle and lines, connecting the top of the pyramid with the letters N and M, forming the reverse triangle. Two minuscule snake heads adorn the top two corners of the back of the bill, and on the front, a tiny owl is perched on the top left corner of the one. The owl represents wisdom, Lucifer, and also Queen Semiramis from Babylon. Two other important symbols are the acorn and the equilateral triangle inscribed within a circle with a point in the middle. The acorn represents the pineal gland of the human brain, which is the physical annexation point to the protoplasmic spirit, the light body. In ancient cultures, the walking stick or ruling staff of a chief was often adorned with an acorn at the top because it represented spiritual wisdom. The other symbol, the equilateral triangle inscribed within a circle, denotes Satan's ruling hierarchy and is referenced by Madame Helena Blavatsky in many of her alchemical and occult writings. In the hierarchy of Satan, the circle represents the ignorant and controlled masses, while the triangle denotes the ruling hierarchy of Satan, Lucifer, Jabulon, and Saturn, all interchangeable, positioned in a pyramidal ruling system. The black dot exemplifies Satan himself as the sole ruler over hell on earth. The wizard lurks behind the electronic curtain, his wand conjuring up a gossamer reality for the everyman. Merely electrical signals fired into his forebrain, clusters of photons and electrons enter his eyes and pass through neural pathways where they discombobulate and assimilate a structured reality. For every man, everyday reality is not the truth. It is wholly a mental construct offered on a silver platter by his superiors. Why does every man accept this diabolical gift? Because his eyes are entranced by the colorful reflections off the silver platter, an illusion not fully escaped from. The vibrational prison which entraps every man grows stronger every day as the belief that this is the only reality solidifies into dense thought forms. Now every man has reached a fork in the road. Three paths lay ahead of his gaze. The culmination of events has led to a varied ulterior. Currently, the flow of life produced by all the inhabitants of Earth is projecting three distinct possibilities for the future. In the 1960s, an emblem was forged for this import. The peace sign, adopted by the hippie culture, is a carbon copy of the symbol from this epoch, where new ways of thinking and learning set the stage for a mass demonstration of liberty and justice for all. The three paths aforementioned are laid out as such and should be viewed from the perspective of one traveling south down the middle line, referencing the peace sign as a future signpost. The ruling elite wished for the New World Order headed by Lucifer. David Spangler, director of planetary initiative at the United Nations, once said, "No one will enter the New World Order unless he or she will make a pledge to worship Lucifer. No one will enter the New Age unless he will take a Luciferian initiation." The old-time religion and history are astrotheological. According to Zechariah Sitchin, a scholar capable of translating ancient Proto-Indo-European languages, the men of renown referenced in the Christian canon is a mistranslation. It should say men of the sky vehicles. That makes a lot more sense. In fact, the English word hero comes from the Egyptian word hiru, spelled H-E-R-U, whose precise meaning is a human being who was neither a god nor a daemon. A daemon was a spirit who influenced events on the physical plane and communicated with human beings. It wasn't until later that daemon became demon and took on malevolent connotation. The Greek poet Homer wrote about heroes such as Hercules who were exalted above mortal men. Another poet, Pindar, used the word hero to denote a race between gods and men. Many first-century writers studied at the University of Alexandria and learned the true history of the human race on Earth. According to several novellas and other written documents, the word angel originally meant messenger, but later became associated with non-human entities interbreeding with humans. Angels, daemons, heroes, and the men of renown are nothing more than references to the extraterrestrial presence on the earth. The divine right to rule, the bestowment of the gods, blessing on a king or a pharaoh originated in Sumer, the first major human civilization on this planet. That old-time religion was not the ones known today. It was the worship of the demigods, the bloodlines, the heroes, the hybrid children of the angels or the gods. The theme of royal families claiming the right to rule because of their bloodline is seen all around the world and continues even today. The Egyptian pharaohs were a monumental testament to this divine right, as they would don python-like hats and elongated lizard chins to signify their divine powers. Today, the Magi and their extraterrestrial parents hide behind the Jewish conspiracy, although it is only a facade. The great personages of so-called Jewish history, like Abraham, Jacob, David, and Solomon, were not Hebrews at all, nor did they live in a holy land called Israel. They were in fact pharaohs of the Egyptian royal line. The pharaohs of the Hyksos are the shepherd kings, ruled in Egypt. In lists of kings dug up in Sumer, two names appear as shepherd kings, as one can take into account how similar the Egyptian and Sumerian religions are. Shamash was the Mesopotamian sun god, while Ra was his Sumerian counterpart. Both gods depicted as a winged sun disk. Historical scholar Ralph Ellis writes in one of his studies, "The historical record of Sumer runs substantially parallel to that of Egypt, dating back to some 3000 BC, with king lists much the same as to be found in Egypt. Historically, it would appear that at some point in history, elements of the Sumerian culture sailed across to Egypt, and that the first dynasty kings of Egypt therefore had much in common with the Sumerian peoples." According to Ellis, the Hyksos were Egyptians who followed the religion of the sheep when the astrological age of Aries commenced. The reigning pharaoh at the time, still practicing bull worship, was in opposition to this new epoch initiated by the priests at the mystery school at Heliopolis. The shepherd kings worshiped the sheep instead of the bull. Abraham was the son of an Egyptian pharaoh and became the first Hyksos king, whose real name was Sheshi, although his throne name was Mayabra. Place the M on the end, and you have a perfect phonetic match for Abram. Mayabra Abram, or what later came to be Abraham. In Christianity, Isaac was Abraham's son, but in real life, his name was Anathar, and he was a Hyksos pharaoh. Isaac's son was Jacob. The pharaoh whose throne name was Jacobam. The Israelite Hebrew exodus out of Egypt occurred at the time of the reign of the Jacobam, and was when the Hyksos line departed the region. The royal line of Hyksos returned from exile in Canaan to Egypt with Joseph. No, not the biblical Joseph. This Joseph became chief minister of the pharaohs and married the daughter of a priest at the mystery school at Heliopolis. This daughter was from the Egyptian royal bloodline. I must insert an important note here. It is always the DNA of the mother that determines the purity of the child in regards to bloodline, DNA. Joseph was the firstborn of his father, Jacob's wife, Rachel. Rachel was of pure DNA, thus Joseph was the heir to the throne of Egypt. Joseph's wife was also from the Egyptian royal bloodline. Thutmoses, or Moses, was from a family of priest kings, his brother being the pharaoh Amenhotep IV. Amenhotep IV usurped the right to rule from his brother when Thutmoses expressed altercation with the ruling Hyksos line and hence the early Illuminati bloodlines. Amenhotep married Nefertiti from the line of Joseph because he knew they were from the same bloodline. During his reign, Amenhotep sought to move the capital of Egypt to Amarna, and with it, a new monotheistic religion. In the religious conflict that ensued, Thutmoses and his followers were exiled to a remote part of Egypt called Canaan and placed in stone quarries. The exodus of the Hebrews from Egypt has traditionally been placed in the reign of Ramses II. But this cannot have been, because if you look, you will not find any traces of the Hebrew during the reign of Ramses II. You will also not find the Temple of Solomon or Jericho in any of the archaeological places they are pertained to be. Contemporary evidence has revealed that Moses was born in about 1540 BCE and was brought up an Egyptian prince during the reign of Neferhotep I. He was also initiated into the mystery schools at Heliopolis. Biblical mythology tells us that Moses' brother was Aaron, but we can see now that it was really Amenhotep IV. As an anti-Amenhotep priesthood grew, Tutankhamun, King Tut, Amenhotep's son, was made a new king. He was 8 years old at the time. As he was an initiate in Heliopolis, Thutmoses was well studied in the Kabbalah, which taught that the golden proportion, pi, and the Fibonacci sequence are universal constants, explicating the patterns of astronomy, music, and physics. The Hebrews have not left us a large composite of heritage, save the Torah, the 5 books of Moses. The great book of the Kabbalah is in fact the Zohar, a commentary on the first 5 books of the Old Testament. The Kabbalah instructed that as the physical world is simply materialized thought, so words and letters are the means by which this process unfolds. It has been argued that Akhenaten was the source for the monotheistic religion posited by Moses. But paradoxically, this cannot be so, since Moses, or Thutmoses, came before Akhenaten. Akhenaten's father was Amenhotep III, who had numerous sons. Among them were Thutmoses, Akhenaten, and Amenhotep IV. Thutmoses was the firstborn of the son of the Pharaoh, but he opposed the despotic rule of his family. He led the enslaved Hebrews out of Egypt during the Exodus. But the question is, who were the Hebrews? In 2000 BC, Iberu was a clan of royal descendants from Ebla, an ancient city in Syria, and they were the wealthiest miners and traders of precious metals. By 1850 BC, the Iberu became known as the Hebrew, and it is this word that is the root of Hebrew. The Hebrew had acquired historic knowledge and inventions which made them powerful businessmen. They had also established themselves as influential Egyptian priests and provincial rulers. In Egypt, the Hebrew were granted the settlement of Zion, a major trade center on the Red Sea, and they built a famous channel linking the Red Sea with the Nile River from Zion westward to Cairo. As they reigned Egypt, the Hebrew intermixed with the royal line of the Egyptian pharaohs. Thutmoses was half royal Egyptian and half royal Hyksos. When his younger brother Akhenaten became ruler, Thutmoses did not agree with the heretical religious changes instituted henceforth. He left Egypt with a group of Hebrew and founded Jerusalem, which later became a major trade city. Akhenaten later exiled other Hebrews from Egypt who traveled back to Ireland, the original home of the Hebrew, before they set up a colony at Ebla. The Hebrew who traveled back to Ireland eventually merged with other powerful bloodlines of Europe, and they became the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians set up the founding colonies of many of the great empires of the ancient and modern world like Greece, Rome, and Persia. They later captured Jerusalem, becoming kings and calling themselves Israelites. After the new home, they crowned Israel. There they merged with the Khazarian bloodline and became what we call today Jewish. King Solomon and King David, his father, were also Egyptian pharaohs. David was Susanes II and Solomon was Sheshonq I. The eastern delta lands sheltered the court Tanis of Susanes I, who was the last pharaoh of the 21st dynasty. The true location of the Temple of Solomon, an Egyptian temple, not a Jewish one, was indeed this court palace. The Hebrew name for King David was Duat, Duat being the name for an Egyptian star. This is where we get the Star of David, but it is an Egyptian symbol and not a Jewish one. The Egyptian pharaoh Susanes II of the Hyksos bloodlines had an army ready to overthrow the Israelite tribes under the King Saul, and he had passed this dynasty on to his son Sheshonq I, who was formerly known as King Solomon. The reason why King Solomon was always portrayed with powers is because he was of the priest-king line, the bloodline of the gods. He recorded his secret knowledge in a book that was later laid in the foundation of the Second Temple in Jerusalem. Jewish folklore relates that Solomon's reign was filled with gold and silver, but this exaggeration hardly baffles scholars, as up until this time, the Hebrews had no tradition of building elaborate temples. For this reason, Solomon employed an architect named Hiram Abif to construct this edifice. In the middle of the temple sat the Holy of Holies, containing the Ark of the Covenant and the tablets of Moses. In some ways, it was characteristic of the rich temples erected in Babylon, as you can hopefully see by now that the mystery schools of Sumer, Babylon, and Egypt have laid the foundation for the secret societies today that covertly rule the world. The stories depicted in the Judeo-Christian tradition were written by these bloodlines I just discussed. Real characters were inserted into an allegorical story based on the zodiac, and these doctrines were found bound together by the Emperor Constantine during the Council of Nicaea, at the behest of his draconian rulers. Constantine declared this the new religion, and King Solomon, King David, Moses, Ramses, Jesus, Mary Magdalene, Paul, Abraham, Jacob, Noah, and all the other characters found in the Bible were real historical personages placed in a story based on a monotheistic doctrine demanding worship of a God named Jehovah. Jesus was made the pagan sun god of this religion, and his 12 disciples represented the 12 signs of the zodiac. Christmas was celebrated during the winter solstice, and Easter was celebrated during the spring equinox. But due to the blind followers of Christianity, these dates represented the birth resurrection of Jesus. The doctrines of the Bible were written by these bloodlines, Hyksos, Phoenician, and Roman, so they could control the masses via religion. Islam was set up later to oppose Judaism in the Middle East, while Christianity spread rapidly to the West. Zionism is not about fulfilling biblical prophecy. The sacred Jewish place, Zion, is claimed to be Jerusalem, the place of Mount Sinai. But this is just a fable. Zionism is really about the global dictatorship of the Egyptian Sumerian royal bloodlines through Israel. The protocols of the learned elders of Zion was written by the same bloodlines in order to have a worldwide doctrine with which to rule the world. The official scapegoat for this world takeover became the Jews, although this lineage is highly controversial. Israel is not the home of the Jews. It is the home of the bloodlines that control the world today. In the last century, most of the presidents of the United States have been genetic members of these bloodlines. Today, President Obama is controlled by the Trilateral Commission, a secret society linked to the Council on Foreign Relations, New York, and the Royal Institute of International Affairs, Great Britain. The state of Israel today was the place of Mount Sinai, and it is controlled by the Rothschild bloodline, which can be traced back to Egypt and the Hyksos kings. In antiquity, their name was Red Shield, because of their decorum, the Knights Templar bearing similar attire. The Star of David can be seen on the flag of Israel because the Hyksos pharaohs wore a talisman called a star shield around their necks for protection. It was in the likeness of a two-dimensional star tetrahedron. The reason the Pope holds a shepherd's crook is because it is a symbol of the Egyptian shepherd kings. The title given to the Pope should also be put in its proper place in Egypt under the reign of Populace II. From Babylon to Rome did the Illuminati, the Magi, transplant their operation. The Trinity of Christianity, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, is a makeover of the stories from Babylon Church. The Babylonian Trinity was Nimrod, the fish, Tammuz, the savior of humanity, and Queen Semiramis, the dove, which is derived from the Ka, Egyptian for soul. In Egypt, Nimrod is Osiris, Tammuz is Horus, and Queen Semiramis is Isis. Both the Egyptians and Babylonians used the story of the Immaculate Conception to bequeath the stories of Isis and Semiramis, respectively. Isis was the virgin mother of Horus, the sun god, and Semiramis was the virgin of the god Tammuz. The halos used in pictures of Jesus, Mary, John, the disciples, and angels are representations used by the ancients of portraying their sun god. Many back then, when the vibrations of earth were higher, could see the auras emanating from people, as some who were enlightened had a glowing light projecting from their crown chakras. Auras and halos can be seen in many pictures from long ago. It is a well-established fact that Jesus had an aura, halo, as well as St. Paul and John the Baptist. Even the Buddha is sometimes depicted with a halo around his head. Ishtar, the Babylonian goddess, is the origin of the Christian celebration of Easter. Ishtar had a son, Tammuz, who was dubbed the only begotten son of the moon goddess and sun god, Semiramis and Nimrod. Queen Semiramis is said to have descended from the moon in a giant egg, later to be called the Ishtar egg. The Easter eggs and the Easter bunny come from the Ishtar eggs and the fact that Tammuz was fond of rabbits. Celebrated Illuminati personages go to church, but unlike other people, they understand that they are really participating in an ancient pre-Christian and pre-Jewish ritual aimed at commemorating their bloodline. Just like the Freemasons worshiped the grand architect, the Egyptian pharaohs were called the greatest of architects. Their Illuminati progeny creating the present-day justice and education system. The hammers banged in the courtroom by judges are representations of the hammer of Thor and the hammer depicted on the seal of the Freemasons. In fact, the very craft of Freemasonry is to rebuild the Temple of Solomon, the Al-Aqsa Mosque on Temple Mount being the Temple of Sheshonq I. The secret knowledge from Egypt and Babylon was carried to Rome by one of the first major secret societies called the Comosine Masters. The Dionysian Artificers is the mystery school offshoot of this sacred knowledge. The symbols employed by modern Freemasonry have direct ties to this school in Rome. The British monarchs, ruling throughout medieval Europe and even today, practiced the coronation, the crowning ceremonies of the Egyptian pharaohs. As in Egypt, the right to rule from serpent gods is seen in most ancient tablets and stories. The royal families were created from the gods, whose signs echo throughout all ancient culture. The Buddhist text in India deals with a list of kings who descended from the Nagas, the serpent kings. Hindu legend maintains the Nagas could shapeshift into human and reptilian form interchangeably. The early Chinese emperors were known as the Lung, or the dragon, and many were depicted by artists as having reptilian-like features. The Chinese emperor Huang Ti was said to have been born with a dragon-like countenance and conceived by a ray of golden light that entered his mother's womb from Alpha Draconis, the star of the Egyptian god Set. Genetic descent from the reptilian gods has also been witnessed in Central America. The Peruvian Incas were known by the symbol of the snake. The first Mycenaean king of Athens, Greece, was drawn as a human with a serpent tail. King Cadmus of Greece was also said to have shapeshifted into a reptile upon his moment of death. The Illuminati blood drinking rituals where sacrifices transpire are no different from the ceremonies and rituals performed in Sumer and Babylon. The reptilian gods drank human blood and fed off human energy. The story of Dracula perpetuating from these notions. Dracula was written by Bram Stoker in 1897, and he claimed his story was inspired from a man called Vlad the Impaler, the 15th century king of Wallachia, a country in what is now Romania. He brutally slaughtered tens of thousands of people and impaled them on stakes, and was also known for eating corpses. Vlad Dracul was his father and an initiate of the Order of the Dragon in the late 15th century, an order of the Holy Roman Empire. The most famous vampire legends transpire from this region, which was once known as Transylvania. Like the Chitauri of ancient lore, Dracula has fangs, horns, pale skin, and masquerades around at night. He sleeps during the day in a coffin, this most likely representing the advent of death upon the densification of the material world after the fall from grace. Moreover, the stake in the heart, or the special wood that was used to kill the Chitauri, was also known as holy wood. Later, this became Hollywood. Heresy, the child of orthodoxy, the wizard who lurks behind the electronic curtain, dazzles movie theater audiences worldwide with his wand. He has us all hypnotized by the magic of Hollywood. In the movie Fantasia, Mickey Mouse is a sorcerer who can command ordinary objects to dance with his wand. In Aladdin, the Sultan of the kingdom is hypnotized by the royal vizier with a stick shaped like a python. In Breeders, another classic movie, a doctor and a detective are greatly addled when a string of women are found brutally raped and covered in a strange organic material. After slipping into a coma, the women wake up one by one and hypnotically journey down into the sewers where the doctor and detective find a nest hosting the birthing of otherworldly offspring. This last one is a reference not only to the hypnotism of Hollywood, but also the interbreeding done between aliens and Earth human females. All across the globe, audiences are dazzled by the magic of Hollywood when they are really being hypnotized and implanted with subliminal programming. There is a lighter side to the story. To fully comprehend it, one must be taken to a new perspective, the perspective of these benevolent higher intelligence who watch over planet Earth. They have no permission, nor do they ever interfere with the free will of humans. They do, though, on occasion, send a gift. A gift is not interference because it must be accepted as such. Those who watched World War II from space came to a mindset of great concern after the atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The Galactic Council, referred to often as the Galactic Federation of Light, sent out a call to all souls not associated with Earth to journey to the planet and incarnate in order to help out in any possible way. The watchers over Earth were perturbed concerning the idea of atomic warfare, imploding atoms, because this is the only way that the soul matrix can be damaged. The souls who came to help were given a karma shield, which lent them great freedom for their work on Earth. Karma is like sticky paper. It holds lower vibrational energetic residues, keeping one in the incarnational cycle. The first wave of souls who heard the call and began incarnating in the 1950s had an immensely difficult time adapting to the dense vibrations of Earth. Many attempted suicide. The second wave of souls was not as traumatized, many retaining connections to the outside world, the universe, through channeling abilities. The third wave of souls coming to help Earth encompasses many children being born now and in the last decade. They have 3, 4, and 5 strands of DNA and are quick learners. They are typically more evolved than others on the planet from older generations, which is causing disharmony among social groups. Myriad discrepancies have arisen because of the extreme vibrational differences among these varying groups of incumbents. Many of the third wave souls are diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder because they get bored easily and wander around. They can multitask and are very efficient workers. The medical industry destroying their abilities with drugs such as Ritalin and Adderall, psychostimulants composed of numerous types of amphetamines. The children diagnosed with ADD and ADHD never get better because amphetamines raise a person's blood pressure and force the body to work harder. Those diagnosed with an attention deficit disorder really do take on the effects of the supposed disease because of the stimulant drugs, not because of the physician's medical expertise. Adderall and Concerta have replaced Ritalin in most areas of the United States, both drugs carrying a high abuse potential and both being used as study drugs at universities. William Frankenberger, a psychology professor at the University of Wisconsin at Eau Claire, conducted a study at the university in 2004 and reported that 14% of the campus had used some form of an ADHD drug, including Adderall. In more recent studies done across the country, colleges known to be highly competitive had up to 25% of students misusing ADHD medication. One must also take into account the rate at which people, especially younger people, lie about their drug use. There is at this time the necessary critical mass of new souls for the Earth to make the transition to the fifth dimensional paradigm. However, most people on the planet are still at a low level of consciousness and are holding this process back. More people need to wake up and realize that they have been conned. You are not a victim. You are a God with amnesia. When you incarnate, the blinds come down, and you forget it. And you forget all this. It is all part of the learning and evolution process. Your soul is experiencing all of your past and future lives simultaneously, this being the realm of your higher self. Your conscious mind proper, your awakened consciousness, can only focus on one life at a time and move along a linear progression until your soul becomes evolved enough to move out of the cycles of reincarnation. Even Carl Jung admitted there was a human collective unconscious. He believed that disease occurred when communication between your mind, superconscious, conscious, and subconscious, all of which make up the collective unconscious, shuts off or battens down. The key to this connection is the heart, the physical heart, as well as the heart chakra. The physical heart and brain maintain a continuous two-way dialogue. The heart sends far more information to the brain than the brain sends to the heart, as signals sent to the brain influence perception, emotional processing, and higher cognitive function. The heart also generates the strongest rhythmic electromagnetic field in the body. This can be measured in the brain waves of the people around us. According to the Heart Math Institute, the heart's field is a carrier of emotional information and a mediator of bioelectromagnetic communication within and outside the body. Research shows our heart's fields change distinctly as we experience different emotions. It is registered in people's brains around us and apparently is capable of affecting cells, water, and DNA studied in vitro. Fear is the negative energy, just as love is the positive, which creates a distinct bioelectric signal and disseminates it to organisms within a community or world. The cells in our body communicate through bio-photons, tiny particles of light that act as a single unit of an electromagnetic field. This communication system also exists between organisms and is known as morphic resonance. When fear dominates the collective conscious or unconscious, that emotion is emitted to every individual. The only opposing force to this and way to counterbalance is love. Just as there are positive and negative charges in matter, atoms, so too are there positive and negative charges among organisms. Love is the only counterbalancing force. Your soul contains your collective unconscious, superconscious, conscious, and subconscious minds, and has been measured to weigh anywhere between 14 to 22 grams. It holds together your physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual bodies, which are just varying frequencies of light. Your physical body is the lowest frequency, and your spiritual body is the highest frequency. People are really just holograms, like the universe. When a cephalogram is used, the memories from one conscious mind are beamed into another body that is soulless. When this is accomplished, you have a walking, talking, breathing, cloned personality. Many famous personages are really just clones. As part of the Plan 2000, the global elite are trying to reduce the world's population down to 500 million. When this is brought to fruition, the populace will be much easier to control, since it is hard to keep tabs on nearly 7 billion people. Imagine the fright the New World Order specialists would face if 7 billion people decided to stand together. The case of Billy Meir from Sweden is a well-documented event of benevolent alien interaction with people from Earth. The Pleiadians contacted Billy and visited his house on numerous occasions, teaching him metaphysical concepts and helping him to build a meditation catalyst pyramidal machine capable of taking one's consciousness into higher dimension. They took him, Billy, to the future. Remember, there are many possible futures. And he took pictures of World War III. In one of these pictures, California is underwater and New York City is totally annihilated. This is not meant to scare you, merely to inform you. The other side is not heaven or hell. It is the fourth dimension, where there are 3 dimensions of time and 1 dimension of space. To move is to move forward or backward in time, not to move to any special X, Y, Z location. When a soul incarnates into a physical body on Earth, it gathers itself at the middle point between this reality, 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time, and the other side, 1 dimension of space and 3 dimensions of time. It then attaches itself to the central nervous system of the body it wishes to inhabit, once permission is granted from the higher self and angelic hierarchy. Can you see now why knowledge is power? If everyone knew this, there would be no control or suppression. Once you take away knowledge, there are only 3 currencies left: gold, oil, and drugs. Money is not a currency because it is backed by absolutely nothing. Money is only worth its weight in whatever economy distributes it. The bloodline families control all the real currencies, of course, like technology and knowledge. The result? Here are some facts. Half of the United States population is over 50 years old. The average weight of a woman in the United States is 163 pounds. Fat retains toxins and poisons effectively, and that is why everyone is sick all the time. The population of Earth increases by 250,000 people a day. Oil is not replenishable like the governments say. Inflation increases by 20% a year on average. When you use a cell phone, you are microwaving your brain, which is why people get brain cancer. The current unemployment rate in the United States is 25%. 1/3 of the United States adult population works for the government at any level. One branch of the Bank of America only has $2,500 in cash on an average day. The rest is numbers on a computer screen. 33% of the world's population lives on $1 a day. According to the Constitution, wages are not taxable, although the average American loses 1/4 of his or her paycheck every year. Sugar is carcinogenic and highly addicting, although it is much of the food we eat. Hundreds of animals and insect species die every day due to the destruction of nature. No country wants the American dollar anymore because it is worth less. Walmart has the largest computer database of goods sold, and now new televisions are linked to computers that record what everyone watches. There are 2 mafias. One controls Las Vegas and another controls Reno. Nevada has no taxes, and that is why people live there. However, gambling takes much of the people's money. Concentration camps are being built all around the United States, and nobody is asking questions. I say that heresy is the child of orthodoxy because the global elite create the orthodox paradigm by establishing organized religion and an economy that runs on money and oil. They did not create this paradigm for themselves. They created it for the people. Those who backlash against orthodox belief are branded as heretics. Why? Not because they are wrong, obviously, but because they are seeing the maneuverings behind the curtain. Few people who label others as heretics know what they are doing or saying. Orthodox does not mean right, it means most. That is why the Spartans thought democracy was the worst form of government. The people can be led to believe anything. It is time now for the ground crew to receive the new indoctrination, the new paradigm. Take your eyes away from the television and listen to a message from the sponsor of truth. We are all one race. We are all one consciousness. On March 21st, 2013, the planetary light body will activate and Earth herself will ascend into the fifth dimension. Get ready, because the Earth and everyone on it are turning into stars. The evil Nordics and reptilians are trying to prevent this. They control the secret world government. In the movie Star Wars, there is a group known as the Empire. Few people know that this is a real group. The real empire spans from first density through fourth density and is in control of planet Earth. The Alpha Draconians have created a fake light body hologram and will try to teach a false version of ascension. Those who fall into this trap will be taken away in 2012 on reptilian and Nordic spacecraft and will be used as slaves or as food. The Dark Ages were when all the ancient mystery schools were wiped out and organized religion took over. Let us try to avoid a repeat, shall we? We can all start by ceasing to watch television. The change from analog to digital television looks like this. Analog, few channels, muddy picture. Digital, many channels, clear picture. Or in other words, mind programming, super advanced mind programming. Well, the question is, are you going to change your channel and tune in to the Aumbonda New Earth Education Podcast? Namaste. Namaskaram.